Okay.
Right? Okay. So have have you read the consent form, and do you agree with all the terms inside?
Yes, I do. I agree with all the terms.
Okay. So now let's get started. Okay. First question. Um, out of the times that you watch English movies with subtitles, how often do you note down the words and phrases that you do not know?
To be honest, whenever I watch a movie with subtitles, it's mainly for entertainment purposes. Like I want to relax and kind of just um, mm, chill out with my family or friends. So I don't normally pay much attention to like words or vocabulary in general. However, on the few occasions that I do, it is mostly because I need to watch that movie for like an assignment. So I would maybe note down just 2 or 3 words that I've noticed that I can use in my daily life. But other than that, I don't do it much often.
Yes, thank you. So, what types of film do you often watch?
Um, well, actually, I have like a very eclectic taste of movies, but on a daily basis, well, I would say sitcoms, especially those like Friends or How I Met Your Mother. And another movie genre that I watch uh, on a pretty regularly is probably like superheroes or action kind of movies with a hint of comedic factors.
Okay. Um, so, how has watching movies with subtitles helps you increase your vocabulary range?
Well, even though I don't note down words or phrases intentionally, but I would say that watching movies in general has helped me a great deal in increasing my vocabulary as well as like my grammar in general because um, growing up watching How I Met Your Mother, especially since I was in like secondary school, I picked up a lot of the languages that they've used in the movie in the series. I'm sorry, and I find my way to incorporate those into my daily use of English. And by watching those movies constantly, I also feel like it's just like I pick up the language very naturally. I don't have to try to take up any sort of speaking courses to improve my English because I used to enroll in a course once when I was like in grade 6 or 7 or something, and it didn't help much. However, just by watching many movies and also like YouTube videos, on the other hand, it helps me a great deal. So I would say that I'm really grateful for all the movies, the English movies that I've watched growing up because I think they played a pretty key role to helping me speak more fluently.
Yes. So, can you recall an experience when you first learn a phrase or word that you need to memorize, and then you later on see that appears in the film?
Mm, um, that one is actually pretty hard. But yeah, I can think of one example right like on the top of my head because this one is very like kind of I don't know why it has such like a strong impression on me, but when I was in secondary school, I used to learn a lot of phrasal verbs to help me with my, like my high school entrance exam. And there was this one particular phrasal verb, which is follow through. It is in a group of phrasal verb that starts with fall. So I also have to learn that one, but I did not remember it very well because there was so many of them and all of them start with fall. And so when there was this one time when I was watching How I Met Your Mother, and then the character Robin, she said something about a plane that it fell through. And I don't know why, but I remember that particular line very well. And you, like, people might think that I make this up, but if you listen to that scene in How I Met Your Mother, then you would find the word fell through in one of her lines. And it has stuck with me ever since.
Yeah. So although that you say you don't actually remember, it's quite hard to remember it specifically. Do you feel that the occasion happens a lot?
So you mean like the occasion where you have to learn one word and then it appeared in the movie happens a lot?
Yes. Does it happen a lot to you?
Uh, for me, I would say not that often. Like I would say like maybe on a scale of 1 to 10, that it would be like a 6 or a 5 maybe, because although I do have to learn a lot of words, but I feel like a lot of the time they are like maybe a bit technical or a bit too advanced. So it doesn't make a lot of sense if those words appear in the sort of everyday language used in movies. But I think for people who are like maybe beginners or on a kind of intermediate level, they would find a lot of the vocabulary that they are learning also appear in movies. Yeah.
So do you feel like that the words that you see reappear in the movie are remembered, are memorized more easily because of that?
Oh, sure. This is something that I firmly believe in because most of the time when we learn new vocabulary and we don't put it in context, or the context is just not as natural, like maybe you force yourself to read a book or a paragraph that has a word in it, but it is of no interest to you, then I don't think it would be a great idea for you to try to, no, not to try, but like to even remember it from the first place. However, when we see the same word being used in movies, or like some sort of videos, clips that are of interest to us, then chances are we would be able to remember that word much better, because I've told you that I can't recall immediately every single occasion where I see a word that I've learned previously appear in a movie that I watch, but I can tell you that all those times have helped me a lot in remembering those words. And sometimes a very, I think, a bizarre word that I've learned that doesn't appear that much often, but once it appears in a movie that I've watched, maybe it's some sort of like bizarre word about magic or about superheroes, but because they are of interest to me, because they make me happy when watching it, then I would be more likely to remember the word later on.
So how about the opposite? Can you recall a time when you watch the phrase on the movie and then later on it appears at school and you have to memorize it?
I think this one is a bit harder, honestly, because not because I've never encountered that occasion, but because I think it happens more often than when I have to learn a word and later see it in a movie. Like because the words used in movies are like the vocabulary range is massive, and I don't think a lot of people will be able to pick up all of those language to later realize that they are learning it in their school. Like when you watch a movie, I think you pay more attention to the content unless you intentionally try to um, practice your listening skills or your vocabulary in a specific field from the first place. But if that isn't your purpose, but then you would just mostly pay attention to the content. And maybe that's why when you later encounter one or two words that you've seen in a movie at school, I don't think it will be that possible that we actually recall them. So probably that also explains why I don't like there aren't any sort of like examples that just come up right on top of my head. So yeah, that's my answer.
Okay. So can you then name any phrases that you learn from the movies, not from school or study, that you continue to apply to you?
I must say a lot. Like I would need like much more time to actually like think of a phrase or any sort of vocabulary that I pick up from movies. But actually, here is the thing with my speaking. I think most of the stuff that I'm using right now are actually what I've taken from the movies or the series that I've watched before. I don't know if you can tell, but I think my speaking style is influenced a lot by the movie How I Met Your Mother. Um, oh my God, I learned a lot of phrases, but it's just hard for me to like recall exactly right on the spot.
Yes, it's okay.
Yeah.
Probably the last question now. Um, have you ever experienced the mistranslation of a phrase in the Vietnamese subtitle?
Mistranslation, right?
Yeah.
Yes, yes. I can think of right away one example because I've talked about this with my friend. It is from a scene in How I Met Your Mother also. I've watched that a lot. And there was this part where the character Barney, he smoked, okay? And then because he smokes, he coughs. You know, when people smoke, they have like lung problems and then they cough and he coughed and then what after he finished coughing coughing he says that he is I am ripped and the word ripped is like a sort of I think a slang for having like six-pack abs and a lot of body muscles and when he said that I am ripped, he means that because he cough a lot, his abs actually like forming like there are actually abs forming underneath his skin. However, when they translate the lines "I am ripped," they just said that I feel so fine, and I think because of that translation, the comedic factor, like the reason why the line is funny, sort of like got lost in the translation process. And even though I know that the translation team tries their best, but it still bugs me a lot when I think about that. Like because the line "I am ripped," I think is a very funny one if you understand it in the context and if you know what it exactly means in English. However, when translated into Vietnamese, it just lost its funny factors. So yeah, that's one example I can think of.
Yeah. So do you think that it often happens? Like how often do you think it happens?
I think I think it often happens because a lot of the English words don't have an equivalence in Vietnamese. Like people would say that that's not true, but I think I've encountered a lot of words where it is just hard to like find an equivalence in Vietnamese. So sometimes the translator job is to kind of like turn those words into like a complete different phrases, but with like a very close meaning. Or there are occasions where there are a lot of like English proverbs and sayings that don't have also an equivalence in Vietnamese. So people have to kind of make do with what we have in Vietnamese and get the meaning across. So I don't think it's a bad thing, but it does happen quite often in movies and series translations.
So I said that was the last, but then your answer makes me realize some of the aspects that I should have mentioned in the question. So may I ask, what do you think are some of the possible problems with learning vocabulary with subtitles in Vietnamese?
Okay. So I think the first problem when you mentioned the question is, I think, okay, this one may sound a bit like irrelevant, but I think attention span, because for someone with like short attention spans, like I do, then it's just hard for me to concentrate on just learning the language when I watch a movie. Like I usually get very carried away. And the second thing, the second problem I can find with learning English through subtitles is that um, you might not be able to pick up all of them. And actually, I think that is pretty impossible to pick up all of the language, but then you will have problems singling out the key vocabulary that you need to learn because there are just so many lines and so many of them. And you will have to actually watch the whole movie to be able to pick out the phrases that are most important to you. And the third aspect with learning language through subtitles is that I've read an article before. It says that when you actually pay attention to learning something while doing other things, then chances are you will not be able to pick up as much as when you don't pay attention. Like this one may sound a bit contradictory, but um, my point is that I feel like before when I watch a movie and when I don't pay much attention to the subtitles, I would be able to pick up more words than when I actually do. Because when I do, well, then it would feel very forced. So I think the problem lies in the fact that you have to create like an appropriate setting and kind of like a purpose when you watch a movie so that you can maximize your cognitive capabilities. And well, yeah, that's pretty much it.
Okay. So that's the end of our interview, and thank you very much for participating. Oh.